2019 NetEvents IT Press Summit in Barcelona was opened by a keynote speech from VMware, the virtualization company, and more specifically by the Chief Technology Officer, Joe Baguley. His job was to talk for about 20 minutes on cloud, networking and security, so pretty much everything that connects everyone. And, after some opening remarks, Baguley got into the meat of the matter.
So VMware's vision, very simply, has been for 5 or 6 years the same, and will continue to be this until, whoever knows, which is essentially, we would like our customers to be able to deliver any application from any cloud to any device. And the any cloud story has been developing quite strongly. Some of you may have noticed recently we announced with Microsoft VMware on Azure. So now there's pretty much every cloud in the world you can now run a VMware workload on and essentially achieve what we've been aiming at, which is a globally consistent operating system and a globally consistent operating model for our customers, enabling them to have choice between different clouds. And then obviously the ability to do different applications. There's a whole bunch of stuff there about Kubernetes and other things I'm not going to talk about today. But that's not cool anymore, apparently, because if you go to any of the really cool, trendy conferences with people with much better beards and much tighter jeans than me, and much younger than me, it's all about PaaS and like serverless, right, dude? Isn't it? That's the thing, yeah? And if you're not talking about PaaS and serverless, then you're not cool, apparently. Well, this is where the first word in my title comes in. Now, normally when I do this in different countries, I translate that word, but I found out that actually it's a word that's pretty much the same in most European languages, and that's chromatography.
Baguley then explained how applications are disaggregating, turning into their component parts. And we can see this when we look at VMs, containers, and functions as a service, he said.
And so when I go and talk to people now, and I talk to CIOs, the realization and the dawning is that what they're not going to do is get all of their applications and put them into one of these. What they're realizing is they're going to have a strategy for every single one of these boxes going forwards. And it's not just 5 boxes, folks. It's more than that, because it's 10 boxes. Because you're going to have answers for all of these, both on and off premises. So now it's not just one, it's 10 different destinations. And what's fun is you don't take one of your applications and put it into one of these boxes. You take one of your applications and smear it across these boxes, and then you take another application and smear that across the boxes, and so on and so forth. And so if I give you an idea of a normal application that we're working on and deploying with our customers right now, large German car manufacturer, what they're doing is they are using functions as a service on premises with some specific OEM gateways, essentially Zigbee to IP gateways, that sit there and read stock levels, where a particular car is in the process, how many tires they've got, etc., at a periodic basis. Now, obviously, you don't need to monitor how many tires you've got in a factory 30 times a second. Every half an hour is fine, even every hour. But other bits, where is the car in the process? Yes, I need to monitor that 3 times a second because it's moving. So they use functions as a service there to periodically run different bits of code to then write some data down to an on-premises SQL server. 2 boxes. Stay with me. They then have some really cool, funky stuff they've written in containers, because that's the cool way to do it nowadays, guys, that does what we in the old school call ETL, which is pull data out of that database, process it, and then pushes it out to Amazon S3, which is IaaS. So that's 4 boxes now, folks. Where they then have platform as a service running in Google, because they're using Cloud Foundry in Google, to look at that S3 database and then build dashboards and real-time stuff for management. 6 boxes now. What's great is, because they've got a subset of data of what's going on in their factory and their production process in S3 now, sat publicly, they can sub-permission that, so their suppliers can now see parts of that, so they can understand to do a bit more predictive in-time analysis of how they're going to ship stuff into the factory. So that's 6.5 boxes. That's a normal app. That's a normal app for our customers.
This disaggregation clearly has a huge effect on security, Baguley explained. Not least because applications are arriving into the corporate network from end users as well.
So thinking about security changes fundamentally as we go forward. And There was the famous saying, the network is the computer, if you remember that from the Sundays. Well, now we're into the application as a network, and it's been said a million times by a million people, but it's no more true now than ever before. It really, really is now a challenge for our customers to understand that pretty much everything they do is not about that server in a data center. So it's why for the last 4 or 5 years at VMware, we've been working on edge technologies, distributed, integrated, software-defined networks, software-defined storage, essentially building a distributable platform that will run anywhere. And so now for our customers, I can provide them with a software-defined data center. Here comes the marketing slide. Just warning people. I will as we do this. That's the only one. We have been building what I call an operating system for data centers, which is now an operating system for clouds, which is something that gives you globally consistent operations at every point in this chain. So whether you're doing it in a public cloud, such as AWS or IBM or VMware, or VMware Cloud on AWS or Azure, it's exactly the same operations model, the same security model, the same network with NSX that you're doing at the edge, that you're doing in your core data centers. And so whether you're building new style applications, old style applications, cloud native applications, 12-factor applications, microservices, doesn't really matter. The platform that it sits on is a consistent infrastructure.
Baguley then gave concrete examples of the changes from the military and from retail, and how hyper-converged infrastructure gets smaller and easier to manage and configure. He then went on to talk about how this changes the security model. In particular, how security that is mainly reactive today needs to become predictive. But the problem is that there are hundreds of vendors and products out there. How to choose? VMware has a solution, said Baguley.
What we can do here is we can give visibility and control without more agents, no more appliances, and without bolt-on controls. So our focus at VMware has been on leveraging the virtual infrastructure to dramatically reduce the attack surface. And by doing so, use our position to provide you with a clear understanding of the applications running on top of us. It's all about its intent. And to lock it down to ensure good rather than chase bad, to make security intrinsic rather than bolt on. And that's more than embedding just our old controls into a switch. That would be simply integrated security. What we're doing, integrated security makes security a distributed service within the platform. It rethinks the model of leveraging the power of the cloud to secure the cloud. If the law of gravity no longer applies, don't define yourself by it. We've changed the rules with cloud. We've changed the rules with virtualized infrastructure. We've changed the rules with virtualized networking. We've changed the rules with virtualized storage. We need to change the rules about how we do security. So what does this shift in thinking look like? Well, let's consider how this would change something as basic as a firewall, right? We all understand enterprise firewalls, hopefully. But using the principles I laid out and the unique properties of virtualization, you end up with something that you don't add to your environment, you already have it. It is your environment. You now use this new distributed service provided by your environment to see your infrastructure through the lens of the applications running on top of it. What you do is through the application you understand what known good is. I know all the components of my application. Through machine learning, I can understand what those components do, how they talk to each other. By collecting similar components and information on similar components from all of our customers and 50 million VMs worldwide, I can do unbelievable understanding of how things behave. Then, what I can do is I can start to say things such as, hang on a second, that thing there is talking to a box it never talked to before. That thing there is encrypting its file system. It's never encrypted its file system before. I can spot from understanding how and what normally communicates with each other. I get to a world of known good. And that world of known good means that both the network level and at the host level, I can understand an application and apply policy, not just in isolation. A known good is the difference between golf and tennis. If you're playing golf, it's very different to playing tennis, right? Hopefully you've worked that one out by this age, okay? Now tennis, what you're doing is you're playing against different opponents on a weekly basis, and those opponents can hit the ball at you in thousands of different ways. Millions, if you consider all the possible trajectories, spin, etc., of that ball. So you can spend your life perfecting the ability to deal with and respond to a rapidly changing threat. Known good is the opposite. That's like playing golf. Where I stand in relation to the ball never changes. I can tune that to my own liking. And I'm continually practicing how I perfectly hit that ball every single time, because I know the parameters of the world I live in. I might move to a different golf course and learn different golf courses, but ultimately I'm working off a base of known good. It's a very, very different way of thinking. And so it's because we understand this both at the host and the network level that we can do this. So in this model, because what we're doing is we're putting security into the hypervisor, security monitoring and management into the hypervisor, then connecting those hypervisors to all the other hypervisors, and then understanding the network, the security, the compute. Because what we're in is a unique position. As a hypervisor, I see everything, okay? Because I am the virtual world that everything lives in. So I see every piece of network traffic, but also I see every piece of storage traffic. I see every piece of memory traffic. I see every CPU traffic. I see everything. So I am in what we call that Goldilocks zone for security to understand what's going on. So we know the host because we booted it. More importantly, we're outside the host because we're not stuck inside an OS. And more importantly, we're everywhere. We are a distributed service. We're running the network, we're running the storage, we're running the compute, we're running it across multiple clouds. We can apply a policy that stays and lives with an operating system, with a host, with a guest, no matter where that ends up in the infrastructure. In the old world, if I took a VM and wanted to move it from one data center to another, that was a nightmare of networking security. I'd have to tell the network team we were moving a VM. And they'd scream at you about trunk ports and PIX firewall rules and all this other kind of stuff, right? In this world, I drag and drop the VM from one cloud to another, its security goes with it, its networking goes with it, its policy stays with it, I don't have to do anything. More importantly, we sit holistically with global machine learning and learn from all the hosts. This comes together into what we call a service-defined or service-driven firewall. So an enterprise firewall makes sense for north-south traffic, right? Where we've defined perimeters and users going to the internet and comms and extend beyond our applications. But it's the wrong tool for the job inside our environments. Inside, we need to understand the composition, topology, and intended behavior of our application and lock them down. Least privilege for your entire application, for everything that it does. This is an internal firewall. It's an east-west firewall as well as a north-south firewall, but it's not a firewall. It's intrinsic in what we're doing in the system. And it's not just taking north-south concepts and sticking them inside the firewall, inside our hypervisor either. It's leveraging the unique capabilities of the cloud to make it even better than we possibly could be. So what do we need to do? As an industry, we need to drive and invest in prevention. We had a customer spoke at RSA for us in the keynote, and she was a bit bolder, and she said, fire your security team and don't hire them back until they've built an application, which was kind of interesting. It's a bit strong. I'm not going to say that myself is the best way to do it. But while you're at it, make your application teams visit the SOC, the Security Operations Center, and see what a challenge it is to secure the attacks based on what they've built. Okay? I mean, the prevention one's pretty obvious, right? Do I buy and spend loads more money on firemen, or do I work on making houses a little less flammable? It's not difficult to understand. Focus on applications. This is probably, for me, as a technologist and an architect, the biggest shift. Applications were something we ran on top of the infrastructure that we secured, right? Now it's different. Applications are what we're all about. Applications are bigger and more complex than ever before. Applications are what we secure. The infrastructure should not be something we have to worry about. The infrastructure should be there to support securing applications, not the other way around. So when you're looking at those other security vendors or the security world, think about how many of them are talking about securing infrastructure. For us, we need to make security intrinsic, built into absolutely everything that we do. Built into the hypervisor, built into the network, built into the compute, built into the storage. So no, VMware is not a security vendor. We don't sell security software. What we do is we make sure that security is in everything that we do with our platform, and we make sure that we enable others to add security features on top of that. And with that, that's my 20 minutes up, and I thank you very much, and I think I'm going to head over there and sit down and have a chat with Joel. Thank you.
And to a round of applause, Baguley went on to be interviewed on stage by Joel Stradling, Research Director at Global Data, and to face questions from the floor.